Coming up, what an excellent day for Mary. Well, howdy folks, and welcome to Minute 22 of The Exorcist Minute, a show where we endeavor to examine, extrapolate, and excavate The Exorcist minute by terrifying minute. My name is Lester Clark.
And I'm Keenan Diaz.
And we'll be your holy guides on this journey through what some have called the scariest movie of all time. All right, so our minute begins with Mary Karras saying this is her house and she's not going no place.
And it ends with Damien closing the door to his mother's apartment.
But let's go back to the top. Like I said in the previous minute, it feels like this is an argument they've had many and many a time. And I love the blocking here. Take a look at how Karras is positioned. He's kneeling to his mother, Mary, with his hands clasped as if in a desperate plea or perhaps a prayer.
Right.
God, help me with this, please. I am your priest. I'm doing your will. Please help me help my mother. After a moment, he gets up, passing his hands over his face as if to wipe away some weariness. He coughs and then wonderfully dates this movie in a way we can't ignore. We can't pass this up and not talk about it. He takes out a cigarette and begins to smoke in front of his sick mother. Dimmy, what are you doing?
Yeah, before we talk about the smoking, I did want to point out like how long of a take we hold on Mary here.
Okay, all right.
This is a non-professional actor, like we were saying before. And it reminds me of the long take we have of Reagan earlier. She's talking about the horse that she saw, and the man that she met, and we hold on, and it is a little bit like the movie or Friedkin trying to, look at this performance from this person. You've never seen them before, right? And it makes it feel like we're looking at a real person, because you can think that when you have like a dog movie or something, where the actor is a dog. I just showed this movie in my class called The Bear, which is the earliest movie I can ever remember seeing in theaters. And it's the lead actors are bears, like live action bears. And, you do tricks because they're not acting. So you cut away to other things,
Right.
So instead of with Reagan cutting away to Ellen Burstyn, who's a professional actor, we hold on Reagan. We're like, no, look, this is a real performance. It's a real person. And then here we've held on this mother for almost a full minute. Where you might think, oh, we'll cut away to Jason Miller and have him do the heavy lifting in the scene.
Right.
Instead, we're confronting this real person who, as far as we can tell, it just, isn't acting.
But still kind of giving us a performance, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because, and like we said in minutes previous, folks, there is something to be said about reacting, right? And they teach you that in acting schools. A lot of beginning actors will kind of, you can see it in their face. You can see it in their stance, how they're like kind of tense and they're looking at the other actor and they're waiting for their turn to speak, right? They're not hearing anything. All of the lines from the other character are kind of, sort of like washing over them, and they're just like, yeah. But when do I get to say, to be or not to be or whatever like that,
Right. That comes a lot from how, say, amateur children's theater would work, right? It doesn't, the audience isn't looking at the kids unless they're speaking. So
right.
Like, oh, it's my kid's turn, right?
Yeah.
And in the classical days, you would hear stories as they're kind of inventing what movie star acting is in the 1930s, of people like Jimmy Cagney or John Wayne saying, I don't need this line, give it to the other guy because my job is to react.
Right.
Give it to the day players. Let them have to deal with this trash line. I don't want to speak.
So yeah, there is definitely something to be said about this performance here. Just her reacting to her son kneeling down in front of her and trying to convince her yet again to move out of her house, out of her home.
I like you bringing up the blocking, right? We have this sort of, he's lower than her, which is always, important in the frame, I would say. He's lower than her. He's revering her. Even as he's worried about her or beset by her. And then when he crosses over, we get a very different sort of feeling when he lights a cigarette and she's very low in the frame and very small. And he's sort of judging her, it feels, or at least the shot is diminishing her.
It's almost like night and day, these two.
Right.
These two images. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So back to smoking. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about smoking in films. I want to talk about smoking in the 70s. It's just amazing to think back on how normal it was back then. And it made me wonder how aware we were about the health risks associated with smoking back then. Because let's be clear here. Dimmy loves his mother. These shots are not meant to show us that he's inconsiderate. This is a case of the film being dated, I think. It was made at a time when Damien probably wouldn't even think of this as a health issue. For all we know, mom might be smoking as well, right? So, and not too long ago, doctors were pushing cigarettes as healthy, right? Go on YouTube and you can see old cartoon characters pushing cigarettes. There's a disturbingly long commercial, or maybe like a collection of commercials, where it's just the Flintstones lighting up and talking about how Winston tastes good like a cigarette should.
Well, hold on a second. Shouldn't it be Winston tastes good like a cigarette should? That was my Fred. I don't know.
There we go.
Wait, hold on. Barney. There we go. Winston tastes good like a cigarette should. There we go.
You're right there, Fred.
Yeah, the Winston's was the sponsor for the Flintstones. So back then in the early 60s when the Flintstones launched, that was they had one sponsor. So it wasn't the later type of TV model where we have multiple commercials, and the show didn't necessarily know what the ads were going to be. Back then, the people who paid for the show were the sponsor. That's why they're called that sponsor.
Right.
And there was only one. So I Love Lucy had cigarettes for their first couple of seasons. Those have been stripped away from like the DVD releases, and I'm sure it is on the Flintstones as well, because now we kind of think of it as a kids show.
Oh, right, of course.
Right. But yeah, it's really kind of shocking. But they, even I Love Lucy, their interstitials for their commercials were animated as well. So it was an animated Lucy and Desi singing about cigarettes. I don't know if it was Winston. I can't remember.
Oh my gosh. And okay, slightly off topic. I might take this out, but we were talking about the voices of Fred and Barney. So Mel Blanc doing the voice of Barney, right? There is a very strong delineation between like Barney's early voice and his later voice. You notice in like the beginning of the show and early on in the show, it's like, oh, hey, Fred, he sounds like that. And later on, he sounds sort of like Bugs Bunny.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. Right.
He's got this higher, more nasally voice. And like for a while, people was like, is that a different person? Is that not Mel Blanc? No, it's Mel Blanc. What happened was he had a stroke.
Oh, no.
And then he went back into the recording booth, and it was time to do Barney, and nobody dared to tell him that wasn't Barney's voice. They were just you just let Mr. Blank work.
Right.
That's Barney's voice now. Right?
This is Mel Blanc. Right.
This is
Bugs Bunny.
Right. This is the great Mel Blanc. Like if Barney sounds like that now, that's just what that is.
Oh, wow. That's
and
crazy.
He just because he kind of like forgot that that he had picked out another voice for his character.
And they didn't want to like play it back for him. Like,
no, they were just like, no, just.
But yeah, it's interesting how those cigarette commercials, I've seen them in class. Like people have shown that in grad school, somebody digged them up for the Flintstones smoking these cigarettes. And it is so shocking because we associate cartoons with children. Of course, the Flintstones were prime time. They were not meant for children. They were meant for everybody. The new Warner Brothers cartoons, they have, when they're creating new ones in the 2020s, they no longer have guns for their characters, even though the characters are cowboys and hunters, because they are for children. So they were made again in the 50s when the cartoon characters were not made for children, and now they are.
This is bringing to mind the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
right?
Where they're literally ninjas, right? Which also, I mean, let's get into like this whole ninja thing. I mean, they're the loudest freaking ninjas. I'm just saying,
right?
Like if you're trying to do like stealthy stuff, like these are some loud ninjas.
They're party animals.
They're party animals. Michelangelo specifically, he's a party dude.
He's a party dude, I believe. Yeah.
Raphael is cool but rude. And, they have these weapons and they're fighting with weapons, but they never, like Leonardo, the one with the sword, but he never uses it to cut people. Like he'll cut like a chandelier or some chains or a pipe that sprays like some misty thing and now they can get away.
Turn a light switch.
To turn on a light switch or, yeah. Yeah. to knock that cigarette out of that villain's mouth, because cigarettes are bad.
Cigarettes are bad.
Right.
Winston's taste good like a cigarette should.
Yeah, that was the zeitgeist, right? It was normal. Ashtrays were everywhere. Restaurants were, filled with smoke.
Right.
So, so much so that like it had this romanticism attached to it, right? Just a few years after this, Ripley and Dallas and the rest of the Nostromo crew are going to be lighting up in space, right? There is so, like, that's how much we thought cigarettes were just going to be, like, around forever. We put them in science fiction. We put them in space. Cigarettes in space.
That's I haven't thought about that. Yeah, we assume it's going to be in the future. In Star Wars, there's no cigarettes because that's the past. So in Alien, they're going to be around.
And that's just how normal it was. And not just normal, it was sexy. It was cool, right? And I guess you could make an argument. It's like, Karras is the sexy, cool priest, right? Yeah. He boxes and he smokes. And it was just part of life and leisure. And, as much as like coffee and Coke, here's the real thing, travel refreshed.
Yeah, there's a line in Thank You for Smoking, the Jason Reitman movie, where the cigarette executive is trying to convince the agent to get, the movie agent to get cigarettes in their sci-fi movie. And the question is, well, like, can there be cigarettes in a zero gravity environment? Can we have it? And Rob Lowe says, we'll just say, thank God we invented the whatever device that helps us, allows us to smoke in space after sex.
The zero gravity cigarette. Wow.
The whatever device.
Yeah. Because we need that. We need our cigarettes up in space, right?
Very glam.
Yep. Now, I don't think we can let Damien off that easy. I think by the 1960s, evidence was emerging linking smoking to lung cancer, et cetera. But was it enough so that people were really like taking it seriously? I'm trying to get into the headspace of maybe knowing that something is bad, but not knowing just how bad it is. Like, I look at the things that we do now. Like, we still drink coffee. We still eat McDonald's. I mean, I'm loving it. McDonald's, we actually wouldn't mind sponsorship from you. Just saying.
Sure.
Yeah, of course.
That's going to bite us in the butt in 20 years from now. And I can't believe they would say that. They would love a sponsorship from McDonald's or Smart Water or something. Yeah.
How dare they? Smart Water that causes like extra eyes to grow on the back of your head.
Yeah, but nowadays there's, the whether there's smoking or not is depicted in your MPA rating. You know, how it says in the little box in the trailer or on the poster, scenes of violence or adult situations. Tobacco use is one of them now. It used to just be drug use, and now there's tobacco use.
Now it's tobacco use.
And I'm not sure what entity is requiring this, but in the film, at the end of credits, it'll say that the film was not paid for depiction of tobacco. Like, similar to no animals were harmed in the making of this, there's a disclaimer that says no one associated with the film was paid for depiction of tobacco products, something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, so things have quite changed. They don't say that about heroin when there's a heroin movie. So there's some kind of third rail involved in smoking where Hollywood has become averse to it.
I guess because like smoking is like legal and available and maybe a little bit more normalized even now, even when we understand that it's not a good thing. It's like I could go out right now and I could get a pack if I wanted.
Yeah. And as smoking rates are down, of course, less people are doing it. It's less socially acceptable. But I had a friend, Emily, who came from Ireland to visit our friend group here in Vegas. And she had a pack of Rolly cigarettes, and the whole pack was covered in black and these terrible warnings, God. You will die, your friends will die. But, Emily still smokes. I mean, I don't know how effective that is. It seems to be just that the social stigma and the taxes have been lowering tobacco use.
So, folks, I'm now listening to the Lord of the Rings Minute, which is another wonderful Movies by Minute podcast. And I'm in Fellowship right now, and they're talking about Gandalf smoking. And there is film footage out there. I don't know if it's available to us, but there was a version of the script where Gandalf was trying to quit smoking. And so he's just sort of like, he's sort of like sucking on these toffees while Bilbo is talking to him. And they tried it, and they actually had Ian McKellen and they had Ian Holm and, doing their scenes. And it just became too much. Like, I guess the noise of the toffee sucking was like, this is untenable. We can't do this.
But why can't Gandalf the Grey just use magic to is it? I guess is there a tobacco so addictive that even Gandalf the Grey can't quit it?
See, and Gandalf the Grey, I mean, like, okay, I'm a super nerd here. I know that Gandalf the Grey isn't even human.
Right.
He's like a weird like angel thing.
Right.
Do Istari get cancer? I don't know.
But why can't they just, use the whatever spell and get him to quit smoking?
Yeah, Rob Lowe had the whatever machine. We can use the whatever spell. And they could add it into the, well, thank goodness we have the whatever spell.
And if it was Sean Connery, the original casting for Gandalf, he would say that's ridiculous. Right?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. I'll smoke whatever I want.
I love your Sean Connery. Oh God. Okay. But yeah. So smoking is definitely one of those stones in the river of film history. And listeners, pay attention to like everything that's around you right now. Like, what is going to be another stone in that river of history that we're going to look back on, and it's like, oh yeah, people drank that, or people ate that, or people did that thing, right?
Yeah, we've now been around. We're both turning 40 soon enough, Lester. We've been around long enough. I mean, when I was a kid, it was one of the funniest things in the world that a man would dress up in a dress. This is man in a dress trope. And if you look at like the AFI top 100 comedies, the top two, Some Like It Hot and Tootsie, are about straight men dressing up in dresses. Mrs. Doubtfire is on the list, of course. And then, and then there's a bunch of other movies where that's maybe not the whole point, is that we put a man in a dress, but that there's, a gag here or there, or, in a cartoon, Bugs Bunny dressing up as a woman or what have you. And it's taken until pretty recently for me to hear people in the trans community saying how harmful that trope is. And if you look at SNL right now, which used to famously have their male cast members dressing up and doing impressions of women, right? So
the church lady, Dana Carvey, and all that.
Yeah, major characters like that. Kenan Thompson would play Whoopi Goldberg on The View,
right?
And the joke wasn't even like, oh look. At that point, it wasn't like, oh, look, here's a man in a dress playing Whoopi Goldberg. He would actually do an impression that was about her mannerisms. But now, now that he doesn't play Whoopi Goldberg, there's a new woman named Punky who does that. And now it's kind of verboten on SNL that they have to have a pretty good reason for a man to dress as a woman. And now they kind of, I'm not sure where I am on this, because when they do it, it's usually like a gay man. Like Bowen Yang, who's an out gay man who then will play Fran Lebowitz on SNL.
Right.
And like, that's okay, I guess. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why that is. So a lot of the impressions on SNL are women like Kate McKinnon and Aidy Bryant playing men. So Kate McKinnon playing, Lindsey Graham or Aidy Bryant playing Ted Cruz, and that's funny. But it's just been explained to me recently that I didn't quite... I'm new to this idea, admittedly, and I'm perhaps a little ashamed of it. But yeah, like when it's a man in a dress, the joke is like, wow, look at this person who's in a privileged position, and now it's funny they're in an unprivileged position. They have to live like a woman for a brief amount of time. Whereas if it's a woman dressing like a man, it's more like, here's someone in a less privileged position making fun of someone in a more privileged position.
Interesting.
Yeah, I haven't really, and I'm sure this, if we have some listeners who this is the first time they're thinking about it, like my initial reaction was like, no, come on, like it's not that harmful. Mrs. Doubtfire is not that bad, or what have you. But I've been thinking a lot more about it. I'm not sure where I land on it, but I'm sure in 5 years, I'll just have made up my mind that, yeah, that's a harmful trope.
And yeah, folks, we would love your input as well. Remember, the address is theexorcistminute@gmail.com. It's all one word, The Exorcist Minute. But yeah, I want to hear what other people think about this too. Sort of to speak to what you were just talking about, like on SNL and stuff like that. To go back to what you were saying, Keenan, like talking about like the church lady, Dana Carvey doing the church lady, or even on Kids in the Hall, when those guys were dressing in drag and they were playing female characters, I just automatically thought of them as female characters.
Right.
Like I think of the church lady as a lady. I think of whenever the Kids in the Hall, when Bruce McCullough or Mark McKinney or Kevin McDonald, when they're playing female characters, I'm in my head, I'm going like, oh, that's funny that she did that.
Right.
Or that's funny that she said that. Or when Scott Thompson plays the Queen. And I just recently watched, because the Queen has passed recently. And there's all this stuff on TikTok of Scott Thompson playing the Queen again. And I always think of her as the Queen. And I don't know if that complements what you said, or if it goes in the face of everything that you just said.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think that with harmful tropes and stereotypes, right, it's less about the individual than the aggregate, So yes, you can look at like, I think the same thing with Monty Python when you're talking about that, right? Like they're all silly characters. None of the men are positive portrayals. Everyone's a negative portrayal. But yeah, I've read some think pieces and some scholarly articles talking about it, and so what's helped me is more about the aggregate of this, of what it means to the trans community or people who are gender nonconforming, and like what it does to our expectations, like the idea that the default is when we see a cis man in a dress, it's funny. But maybe that will change, right, as we have more cis men who are wearing dresses. And right now, a big thing with young men is pearls. I don't know if you've seen that. Like that, pearls isn't like an accessory right now.
Oh, okay.
Like a string of pearls, yeah.
Interesting. Huh. Yeah, I think like having it come to the forefront more, having it become kind of just as visible and accessible, sort of, takes away the need or the even the like, hey, here's an idea, let's put somebody in a dress. It's like, well, that's like that happens all the time now, right? It'd be like, here's an idea, let's have somebody eating an apple. It's like, well, people eat apples now. Like people eat apples all the time, So yeah, and again, this is the type of stuff that fascinates me about film history, because the way that they depict either past, present, or future, and what they think was there versus what was actually there, what they think the future will be like. They think we'll have cigarettes up there in the future, or like if you look at the 80s, we think that everything is blown to smithereens and everybody's riding around on motorcycles and leather jackets and everything like that. It's amazing to look at these movies and not just look at what it's showing us on the screen, but like what it's telling us about the people who made it.
Yeah, and I think that's a great rule of thumb in general, is that when you're looking at a movie and they're talking about the past, they're not really talking about that past moment, they're talking about the present. And then vice versa, when they're talking about the future, they're not really talking about the future, they're talking about their issues or their zeitgeist of the present. So Greta Gerwig's Little Women is not really about the post-Civil War era for women, it really is about 2019 for women. Right.
Or The Crucible is actually about, right, the Red Scare and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Gosh. I love these sort of talks. But okay, so after this, we jump ahead a little bit in time here. We don't know how much time has passed between this cut. We get this feeling that it wasn't a lot, right? Demi hasn't stayed over for a couple of days. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this were the same day. It probably is the same day, like a few hours later.
I imagine so, yeah.
Yeah. Demi, and I can't help but call him Demi while we're in here in this house, right? Mm-hmm. He's all suited up again, dressed up like a real priest. And that face is back, right? Did you notice that like impenetrable mask, right? That same one that he wore as he was walking up to his mother's apartment, right? So he puts that back on just like he puts on his coat. And he's moving through his mother's apartment the same way now, in the same way that he was walking up to it. And we see a little bit more of the apartment, right? So many photos, so many memories. Memories are all this woman has right now. And we have Karis walking through them like a ghost, like our man in khakis from before, walking through the city like a ghost, right? Very much not looking at them. Right. And I also noticed in this shot, we have some candles under glass, right? That always makes me anxious. I don't know why, it's like I'm just like thinking of like candles on Christmas trees or candles in pumpkins or just like random candles. Like, and it's like, you're leaving the house. There's like, and the other person's asleep. Like, blow that out.
That's the 70s for you. They didn't know any better.
No, we'll just leave this fire unattended. Sure.
I do like that, we had seen this shot of the bed and the right next to the door, and we never really got a glimpse to the side of it, that there's actually a bathroom there. Right. So when we had seen it before, it makes the room look a lot smaller, which is what was needed at the time, right? So
right.
I think a lot of beginning or student filmmakers that I deal with, right, they want to show the entirety of a location just by the default. But the choice that Friedkin is making, right, is to make it look much smaller at all times. So we never quite see the entire space. So here we get more of the information of what's there, but we don't see, all 800 square feet of the place in once.
Right. It's hard. It would be hard to like map out this place if like if you're seeing it for the first time. Mm-hmm. Right. And yeah, so right by those candles, right? It's right at the start of the shot, right? He's moving through the room and it's at the bottom left corner of the frame, just under this lamp. There's also a little shrine. We get another crucifix and a picture of Mary, not Mary the mother, Mary the wait, you know what I mean? Well, okay, actually, so this is a good point. I want to bring this up here real quick before we go. So talking about Mary, right? Like it can't be an accident that we have Mary and Mary, right? We venerate the Virgin Mary. We honor her as the mother of Jesus, right? And much like Jesus, I think we forget, and I'm talking about Catholics, I'm talking about Christians, especially, but also like non-Christian or non-secular folks, we tend to think of these characters as just that, characters. Whether you believe or not, you tend to see them as larger than life characters that can't be bothered with like human emotions, right? Jesus never got angry. He never despaired or doubted. And even if he did, it was always part of the story. It was very photogenic and Instagrammable, right? He was flipping the tables at the temple, right? Or he was, let this cup be passed from me or whatever, right? And it was very dramatic, right? With music and all that stuff, right? He never walked through the marketplace like maybe Karis is walking through East 21st Street, right? On the way to see his mother. Likewise, Mary was just the perfect mom. She never worried about anything. She was never stressed. She never scolded Jesus, right? They never fought. Like, Mom, I want to go out with my friends and do miracles. Not until you finish your dinner. Right?
I don't like that Simon Peter guy.
Yeah, stay away from that guy, right? That never happens. Or if it does, we never hear about it because to put those kinds of like humdrum human qualities and those human interactions on these characters almost seems like a blasphemy. But we sort of forget that that's like the point, right? Like if you're religious, you're supposed to remember that, yeah, Jesus is the Son of God, but he's also like human. And with these human doubts and these human fears and these human emotions and like a very real, frail human body that can feel pain and that can die. And as a human, he is being asked to do something impossible, right? He's going through this story as a human. We forget that. And likewise, Mary is a very human woman, a mother who has to watch her son get crucified. Mm-hmm. And whether or not she knows that it's all part of like, some bigger plan and she's part of this bigger thing, it's like, yeah, great. Wow. Great or good. My son, my child is up on a cross. Right. And you read the Bible and you're like, she'll be fine. She's Mary, right?
She was immaculately conceived.
She was immaculately conceived. Yeah. Like, what does that even mean? She's a person. She's a woman. She's a mom who watched her son die, right? But she's Mary. And we sort of like miss the point of the whole story is that we're supposed to identify with the kind of like the suffering and the sacrifice. And, the sacrifice by Jesus, but also like by Mary.
Right.
And again, like I say, it can't be a coincidence that Karis's mom is also named Mary. Well, right? And that was Blatty's mom as well.
Oh, I mean, that's the point, right? Is that there are so many Marys. There are so many Marys in the Bible that the Bible has to mention which Mary and which Martha that we're dealing with. But yeah, it's such a popular name, and if, it's so popular that eventually people forget who they're naming their kid after, right, is the Virgin Mary. And it's so popular that people who walk around with the name Mary don't necessarily think of themselves as being named after the most famous woman in the West. And I think about popular girls' names, especially. I don't know if you track that, because most of the time, boys' names, even when there's a new boy's name like Jackson or something that comes into the top 100 baby names, there's still a whole lot of Christophers and Michaels and Matthews and Jacobs like that. There's still sort of the old names that their fathers might have had. But women's names in America are very different, and they do go through these trends. For a while, Mary was just the name for decades and decades and decades. And in the 1970s, we got a new name that might have been one of the first ones to dethrone Mary. I'm not sure, but the rise of Jennifer. Do you know where Jennifer comes from in the 70s?
No. Where's that?
Comes from a movie, a movie called Love Story, where we have Ally McGraw playing a Jenny, and then all of a sudden, within a couple years, Jenny and Jennifer becomes the number one baby girl name.
Interesting.
Yeah, because of Love Story, and it's not a name that was wholly invented, but all of a sudden we had a bunch of them.
Wow.
Yeah, so I wonder about that a lot. Like why these trends come up? Why Ashley, or I guess Heather in the 70s was a big one. Ashley when we were growing up. Now it's Madison. Why these things happen. And with Jennifer, we can definitely say where it comes from. And with Mary, we know where it comes from.
Yeah. I mean, you might have like, I don't know, Reagan or Goneril or, But but like talking about this Mary right here, right? Talking about Karis's mother, right? We see her sacrifice. We see where she has to live and how she has to live. Well, Karis goes off to heal people and spread the word of God, right? Mm-hmm. But to compare Karis to Jesus here, even Karis wouldn't like that, right? He feels like a fraud, right? He's not Jesus. He's not even a good priest. He says later that he's unfit, right? And he for sure blames his mother's living situation on himself. He's not a doctor. He's not a lawyer. He doesn't make enough money to support her. He can't even be near her because of his job, because of his priestly duties, right? He can't be near his own mother. But it's okay. It's his calling. He's not supposed to feel pain or maybe anger at God or doubt that he's even there. Those are selfish things. So he takes all of that and he puts it behind that mask that he's wearing now. And he moves through the darkened apartment, sort of like how Marin was moving through those covered streets and alleyways. And he leaves some money on the table as his mother is sleeping.
That's really interesting to me, because we read in the novel that he gives the money to the derelict on the subway tracks. And then is like, oh gosh, that was the money I needed for the cab. And so here we don't have that. Perhaps, I don't know. Maybe we're supposed to be reminded of that he chooses, instead of giving it to random people, like he's called to help everybody equally, not protect his mother just because it's his mother. And so he decides to give his money to the mother instead of the man on the subway.
And once again, his mother is sleeping, right? This is a subtle thing. He's sneaking the money to her, probably because she wouldn't accept it if she were awake. Right. And yes, we end this scene with her being asleep again. Remember, we started with Karis coming in, taking off his coat and all his priestly garments and, kind of becoming a child again and going into that room and finding her asleep in the chair. And now he's all covered up again and he's kissing his mother goodbye. And once again, she's asleep.
It's one of the darkest, like just physically darkest shots in the movie.
Right. We're talking literally, folks. Yeah. Like literally it's hard to see anything in this
when he
shot.
Passes through, this beam of light that's in the center of the frame, essentially, I don't know. I'm looking at it now, pause, which of course isn't how you watch it in the movie theater, but it's like 80% black, and this is a horror movie, The Exorcist, and one of the very darkest frames is this one. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Which is like, not even anything scary is going on.
Right here. Unless you really think about it.
Well, yeah. Okay.
It's like emotionally devastating. Yeah. We've spent so much time on these minutes. Because I think it really affects the both of us. I wonder how much it does everybody else, but these minutes are pretty hard for you and me. Yeah.
Yes. When I say nothing scary going on, I'm nothing like the type of scary that I like. Right. This is actually terrifying. This is existentially like very uncomfortable for me. This is the hardest part of The Exorcist for me. Yeah. Oof. But actually, okay. So I wasn't going to talk about that really, really dark segment where he's walking through the apartment. Mm-hmm. Did you notice, Keenan, there's a cut. Like it actually cuts. It's so dark that you can't see.
Oh, it's a trick, huh?
Yeah, it's something happens where like he's moving through, we get a really, really black screen and then it sort of jumps.
Oh,
but
yeah,
it jumps.
I see what you mean. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I didn't catch that first. And I was like, that can't be anything. There's no like intention behind that, right? That's just like, oh, it's, he's in shadow so we can safely cut this?
Oh, potentially. Yes, potentially. If I had to guess, I would say, yeah, that they're trying to cover something. But it is also, it also sort of jars us slightly in this pre-verbal level, right, that we're not even aware of.
Right. And so it is a little jump.
Yeah, it's a little jump. You're right.
Yeah. So our minute ends with Karis walking out and closing the door behind him. Keenan, is there anything else we want to talk about in this minute, or do we want to get out of here as quickly as possible?
Let's get out of here.
Okay, so Keenan, are you thinking what I'm thinking?
I think I am, Lester.
Okay, folks, until next time,
the power of
Winston's compels you.
you.
I meant Flintstones.